Well, let's get to our first discussion now. On the 25th of May, the president of the World Bank, David Malpass, stated that the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine, as well as its impact on food, energy prices, as well as fertilizer supply, could lead to a global recession. Due to the effects of Russian invasion of Ukraine, the World Bank dropped its global growth prediction for 2022 by nearly a full percentage point to 3.2% from 4.1%. In April, the global lender maintains that the economies of Ukraine and Russia are likely to contract significantly, while Europe, China, and the United States are expected to grow more slowly. Meanwhile, economic and financial experts have warned that Nigeria could face serious economic consequences if the global economy contracts into recession. Well, let's talk about this. And I have the right person to break this down to start the week for us on the show today. He's joining me via Zoom. He's a development economist, Professor Ken Ife. Prof, thank you so much for joining us this Monday. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Prof, World Bank is at it again, and anytime they talk, we'll always have to react to it. Now they're saying recession, the global recession, seems to be inevitable. First, what do you think about this before we now come to Africa's most populous nation, what it will mean for us?
Well, a global recession is inevitable because of the impact of the war between Ukraine and Russia. The impact, if you look at energy, for example, over 40% of the gas required by Europe is coming from Russia. And they are beginning to turn the tap down for some of the countries. And then you've had European countries scrambling now for alternative supplies. And you can see that they're talking to Nigeria seriously on submarine delivery to Morocco. And then also we've already been on Trans-Saharan project. So, and they're also talking to Israel to move gas from Israel to Egypt through to Europe. So they are frantic sourcing of alternative energy sources. So there is an impact. And also Russia is one of the three biggest suppliers of oil in the world, and also of gas, actually. So that again means that we are not upward pressure on the price of oil, and not least gas as well. And then there are derivatives of gas, for example, urea and fertilizers. So those are hitting very hard because the prices are doubling in many cases. But Nigeria, the challenge we have there, though we'll come to Nigeria, but globally, the prices, and then the UN World Food Program is frantically procuring food from many parts of the country because of the expectation that they would have to supply food to almost 20 million people. About 8.5 million people are expected to be refugees from the Ukrainian war. And so they are buying up food. Now, you had when the when the IMF and World Bank had their meeting, they were joined by WTO and the UN Food Program, and they were all warning that this crisis is at hand, and they were asking countries not to slow down on export, which is what we saw in 2020 when COVID came. And they are beginning to do that. So that exacerbates the pressure. But yes, there will be a hard time. And then also, that wheat is supplied, a lot of wheat comes from Russia and Ukraine. And that has also more than double the price of wheat worldwide. And the wheat is used for bread as well as for carbohydrate, source of carbohydrate in poultry and fish feed. And the feed have all gone up very high, as well as bioethanol, because they're using them for bioethanol. And all this pressure to replace oil with renewable energy. It also means that there's contention on food supplies from multiple axes. So all of those will tend to increase the cost, input cost for some, and drive up inflation.
And most times when we talk about this dependence on oil and gas from Russia, it takes me back to thinking about a country like Nigeria that has gas in reserve. We have a lot of reserves, proven and unproven reserves. Now, is this not a wake-up call for our government to look for ways that we can take advantage of this? Or is it just like nothing can be done?
No, so obviously something can be done. We've seen an acceleration now on the gas pipeline and mopping up a lot of these gas that we are flaring and shipping them out to Europe. There's a lot of activity there. But I think we need to do a bit more in the management of our oil resources and the use of this subsidy issue that keeps coming back and keeps running out of hand. The fact that there is a swap, NNPC is doing a crude swap with the foreign refiners. And then when they get the PMS, as if that is not enough, they still look back on government to go and raise subsidy to pay for, to subsidize the products coming in. The impact is that central bank that should have been expecting $3 billion roughly every month from the NNPC sales are just not getting that. And that's been going on for all year throughout last year. But in the first quarter of this year, the JP Morgan picked up on it and they started delisting Nigeria from the overweight category because they said, well, we've not made good use of our increase in oil prices. Instead, we're having more challenges. So they delisted us from that, which is not a good idea, but that's what they've done. But there are more, and all this simply because we have not revived the NNPC refineries to be able to give us fuel. We have not given any loan, which is going to be easily repaid by modular refiners to produce more fuel. And all we are doing is just import. So it is just, I just see that as reckless. And we need to do something about that. How can you tell a country that has such a huge budget deficit to go and borrow 4 trillion just to subsidize consumption of petrol? I mean, it's just not acceptable. Well, you need a lot of that money for health, for education, for poverty reduction, for input into agriculture, so that we can, every country subsidizes agriculture. America does. Sometimes they pay their farmers don't produce because, and pay them for not producing. And then when they overproduce, they buy them up and they subsidize. Europe subsidizes. Europe will not even discuss subsidy with you in their bilateral trade negotiation because they have to. In Nigeria, we're not really subsidizing the farmers enough compared to the magnitude of the challenge we are facing in terms of insecurity and its impact on agricultural production system. That has to change.
Prof, interestingly, let's take it now straight to Nigeria. And many say that this would have a catastrophic effect if it happens. That's talking about the global recession. Because clearly we know that we grapple with a lot of issues at the moment, economic issues, forex shortage, infrastructure challenge, and the big one, inflation. So what direct effect do you think this would have? Let's assume it happens. What will it be the effect on Nigeria?
I don't really think that Nigeria will go into another recession. There will be a slowdown on economic activity. But look at the figures. The last GDP was 3.11. What was the GDP the year before? This time last year, it was 0.5. So we have shown a bigger rise of 2.6% over last year's performance of the same time. So that's number one. And remember, the cyclical view of GDP is that you tend to have the highest GDP in the last quarter of the year. So if we are beginning with 3.11, it's very likely we might finish stronger at around 5%. And that collaborates with some of the predictions. We're even going to outperform Africa average, perhaps for the first time. So that's going to be. But then there are headwinds. The headwinds, of course, is that even though Nigeria is an exporter of NPK fertilizer, we're exporting them, but we are facing higher prices from lime. So we're going to have to find lime. The price is also going up. So there will be an impact. And then that doesn't mean that we still can't import fertilizer. You could see some fertilizer being imported from Russia and Canada. But also urea, Dangote is producing urea now. We should be in a position to be exporting urea because we can't consume the whole thing coming from Dangote refinery. So that's another one. Then the third one is that Dangote refinery is likely to come on stream within the next 3 months or so. And that means about 40% of the steam on subsidy will be taken out. And that means we will now have good supply, local supply of refined products. So cutting back on the pressure that we are having on foreign exchange and the pressure that we are having on domestic supply of crude. So there are many things that are going to work against that whirlwind of recession. So I'm not sure. And then also, if you look at the balance, oil is now 6%, just around 6% of our GDP. So it's progressively coming down from 10% all the way down to the point that, and even look at the growth, it was actually negative growth in the last GDP. So we had very excellent performance of the non-oil sector. So which means that we have even government budget looks at the possibility of 35% coming from oil, which also means that if the non-oil performance is as much as 65% of government revenue, then even if the revenue of oil crashes to half, it may not drag us into recession. So that is the importance. So not only in quantitative terms, the contribution of the non-oil sector is increasing, and then in terms of its growth rate, we're also improving. And then also, if you look at the central bank's recent program of FX $200 billion per year on non-oil exports, which is expected to kick in the next 3-5 years, that also going to ramp up production capacity for export. So export revenue means we are going to have more stability, forex stability. Ramping up more non-oil export means we are going to do a lot. We have more macroeconomic control of the economy. So I don't think in this whole year that we're going to see that recession that is threatening the globe. I know that America is witnessing 8.5% inflation. UK is 7%, the highest in 42 years for US. And then all central banks are heading out to increase their monetary policy rates. And then there will be a knock-on effect because when over 60% of world debt is denominated in dollars, so there will be a repricing of debts, of loans. So we are going to experience a small hike on our debt service. So there's no doubt about that. But also there will be capital flight again, more foreign direct, both foreign direct investment and more portfolio investment will vaporize. So that is not, but it's not going to lead to a point where we will get into recession for Nigeria in particular. But for many parts of the world, I cannot say that.
Interesting stuff. Global recession driven by energy crisis resulting from of course, the Russian-Ukraine war. The impact, another argument on one side by some analysts is the fact that we cannot meet up with our OPEC quota. That would have actually gotten more money from the hike in the price of crude oil, which of course is on the high side at the moment. What is your reaction to this, and how can this be addressed?
Well, it's very ironical and yet true that we are likely to receive far more money in the revenue, in the oil business, but constrained now by output. And the output, they say, is the drop in output is caused by vandalism going on in the Niger Delta. And that's why I'm saying that one solid course of action for our country is to actually go and do the Saudi Arabian model, Aramco model. Let's take this, our company, go and find out the value of our NNPC. I suspect that it may be as much as 50 trillion naira if you look at the revenue stream as a going concern, and then add the gas assets and add the physical assets, and then the government will privatize. It should take this to the market, to the public market, and put this on the market, and just reap 20 or 25 trillion for 50% of the stake, and then use that to deal with our debts and cushion the growth in the economy. If we don't do this, we have to do this so that labor will buy shares. All the Niger Delta indigenes and people will buy shares. Oil companies will buy shares. Oil marketers will buy. Everybody in this country can go and buy shares in NNPC. I cannot see how all these the agents in the Niger Delta area who have bought share in NNPC and now have a stake will still go back and bust the pipes. We've got to make sure we have to open this market up. And then make sure that if the whole stakeholders of this company now decide that they are going to forfeit their dividends in favor of subsidy, then let that be. But I doubt very much that they would not look at LNG. LNG is paying a dividend to Nigerian government, and that is because it is run well. And the major of the stakeholders there are the oil companies who know the business, so you can't pull anything over their eyes. So they know what they're doing, and they're all getting profit. Government is getting. But we've left an NPC in a way that they are so hostage to hostilities of all sorts, and they are performing below their potential in terms of managing the output. So let's open it up, get everybody invested in it, and the government will reap that money and use it to reduce our debt sustainability, increase our debt sustainability, and then we have more people involved in the ownership of this company. It's going to turn things around. That's what happened with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia needed $25 billion, and they didn't go to World Bank or IMF. They said, tell me the value of Saudi Aramco. And when they found the value was in the region of 1.5 trillion, they simply sold 5% equity. And that's got the money that they wanted. Got more people to have stake in the national oil business. It's not the best thing for you to be sending governors back every month empty-handed, that there's nothing to share. And then also you coming in and asking federal government to go and borrow 4 trillion to subsidize consumption, reckless consumption of product that you have no control over, rather than subsidize production that will create jobs in the country. I don't think that's sustainable.
Prof, before I let you go, we're talking energy security. Let's talk a bit around food security, which we also know that this war has impacted one way or the other. You talked about wheat and all of this. And we see the CBN investing so much. And at the moment, 1.1 trillion naira at the end of April has been invested in farmers, smallholder farmers, and all of this. But the fear is that some of these farmers are not paying back. What do you think? What does this mean for this initiative?
Well, first of all, I think we deserve to congratulate CBN for the creative way in which they have changed the production system in this country, the agricultural production system, and modernized it and make it more commercial, and extending it to over 4 million farmers, subsistence farmers now, taking loans without collateral. A very creative way, and I keep going around Africa, other African countries, telling them how this miracle has happened in Nigeria. Now, is a what they call it? Is a moving target. I don't think we should dismiss this program simply because some people are slow in repaying. They will repay. The CBN has a lot of arsenal that they have not invoked. They have GSI, Global Standing Instruction. If they decide to turn the screw on, these people will find the money, because after all, what is the money they take in? Some of them are 200 to 300,000 naira per hectare, because it's one farmer, 1 hectare. It's not a big deal. And in 1 hectare, they could, depending on the product, maize or rice, they could earn as much as 700 to 1 million. So it is not that they don't, anybody who farmed would have the money to pay. But some may have taken money and didn't farm. So, but anybody who farmed based on the economics of production for maize, soya beans, I've seen all that and I work with those, they will be able to repay. If you borrow 300,000 naira for rice, and then you have 6 million tons of 6 tons of rice or 4 tons of rice, that will always give you 1.5 million. So it's not that they couldn't pay. It's just that they didn't earn the money. It's whether did they actually farm with the money. If they did, they will have the money. And there's insurance of 2%. So if they claim the flood did what, they can claim the insurance. But what I'm saying is this: we have to take it a little easy with them, because we want to get more farmers on board. We want to extend the products from 10 value chain to 21 value chains, get more states on the south to get involved. But when the screw gets turned on, then the money will be paid. I know that for sure. But don't forget again that these farmers will get this money, they produce the first one, they may reinvest in a dry season farming or in the next. So I'm not giving up hope at all. But then if you look at the prime anchors, which are the big businesses investing there, they are paying over 90%. So they are fine. They're using their money, they build integrated farms and they're paying. Over 90% have paid.
Wow. All right. It's a good way to leave it. Professor Kenny Fede, I must thank you so much for your time joining us this Monday afternoon to